Oh, it's the fake serotonin hit. It's when people do their calculations on selling their property and they're going to be buying their property and they think their costs are much lower than what they really are. Stay tuned. We're going to unpack selling and buying cost. It's ugly.
I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
Good morning, The Economist.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Good. Have we got something to share with you this morning, ladies and gentlemen? These costs, they are phenomenal.
Massive, massive. And this is probably actually something that we've had a few discussions just between ourselves over the last 6 to 12 months. It's always something that intrigues me heavily when it comes to selling and holding your property. And like you said, the fake hit, they're selling serotonin. People, when you go through it in further detail, you feel like you definitely don't pick up those things when you're thinking, hey, I bought this for this, sold it for this, I made this much. It's not as simple as that. And is it always the right path to take? Well, that's what we'll be discussing this morning, won't we, Mark?
Yeah, and to give you the other extreme, when you see like Grandpa Joe, and he's been living in the house for 53 years and he was married for 60 and they bought the property in 1955 for 65 for £1,000, and you're like, hey, so rich. How like that is so much money, and there's no mortgage, and there hasn't been a mortgage for 20 years, and you're like, oh my God, how can you own that whole asset in cash? It may be worth $2, $3, $4 million. You think, it's just like chump change for them. And you think to yourself, what's the secret? How did you, at that young age, afford to buy this? And how did you abstain and stay in the same property the whole time? There's a talent there, and there's big benefits for it, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. I think something that we probably forget or take for granted is the sort of tax benefits and the support property investors get in Australia. And those benefits essentially allow investors to hold assets and potentially buy more. I think what we could start with, Mark, is let's go down the path of, how much you left over versus say if you've got an investment, you've got that 20% equity in there and you want to go and buy something else. This is probably your forte to a T from life experience yourself. But the benefit of, say, selling something than buying, a bigger or better asset versus the person that holds that asset, uses their equity, doesn't lose the cash on those transactional payments, doesn't lose it to any capital gains component either. Maybe you want to just share, your experience in that field of holding it and using your equity to buy.
I guess here's the concept. Imagine by going slow accelerates you 2 or 3 times faster. People like, how does that happen? Well, it's like, hang on a sec. If you actually just go a little bit slower, you could save yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars. And allow us to give you an example of how this would work. So you're a first home buyer and you buy something for 800 grand. Okay. And within a couple of years, it's worth $1 million. And you're like, and assume, say, actually, let's make that a bit tighter, that one. Let's make it 850 and it goes to $1 million. And you put in 50 grand when you bought it. And you're like, dude, I've got 200 grand in this property. 200. What can I do with this $200,000? Now, you would think being aggressive and saying, I'm going to sell and then I'm going to buy at a higher price, you'd think that would be the king hit, but often not. Often it's better not to sell that asset, and it's better to buy another asset of incremental value higher, maybe 500 grand asset next or another $1 million asset, because the transactional costs that you're laying over your asset are false percentages. When you apply 4% that you paid potentially on your purchase for stamp duty, when you apply 2% for selling with an agent, and then you apply 4% on your next purchase because that's what you're going to be paying stamp duty at, your transactional costs are 4% stamp duty, 2% selling fee, and 4% on the new purchase, 10%. But Josh, can you explain it's 10% over what?
Well,
This is the killer.
10% over your new price. So it's actually multiplied that effect or that cost when you compare it to, say, hey, something where you hold and you refinance and pull out that equity as your deposit in the first place. So like I'd like to say, I've got an example here actually, like when holding your growth compounds annually. So for an example, a $1.2 million property grows at 6% annually. In 10 years, that property you bought for 1.2 is now worth 2.15. So an extra 950 grand growth is untaxed until you sell. And I guess that compound sort of works in the opposite way, would you say then, Mark, with how you're explaining these transactional costs?
Yeah, but we gotta before we step to that, it's 10% of money you don't have. So it's that stamp duty that you're paying, that percentile, is over the whole amount. Do you remember the example I just gave? You only had $200,000 of equity when you were getting out of that property and getting into the next one. So if you're doing 10%, that's on $1 million potentially, or 1.2 for your next purchase price, or 1.3 on your next purchase price. So it's money that you right. So if you're saying it's going to be 10%, there's 100 grand. The 100 grand, you've only got 200 grand in the property of equity. You've chewed up 100 G's to position yourself into the next asset. So, guys and girls, what I'm urging you to do today is do not fake your numbers, and that's why we called it the serotonin, the fake hit of selling a property, because you feel good because you've made 200 grand out of your property. But you've just gone and smashed 100 grand in transactionals to get you into the next asset. And that goes back to that Grandpa Joe example I gave right at the beginning, the guy that lives in the property for 40, 50, 60 years. And you're like, he's so rich. He paid it off such a long time ago and has no debt. He just never killed himself with transactionals. It's a big secret of property that no one ever talks about.
Yeah, it's massive. And I think it's even more so important in terms of investors, because when you think about it, if it's your home residence, obviously you're not going to pay that capital discount proportion, but you will still pay those transactionals. But when we flip it to an investor type scenario, they've got that transactional cost as well as the capital gains on that component. And of course, if you don't sell, you don't pay the capital gains, meaning that you have essentially got more funds by holding the property in equity to go and purchase something else. So you're actually diminishing your purchasing power by selling and chewing up all the hard work you've put in by those costs related to selling.
It's going to chew you up, guys. It's going to chew you up. And here's the kicker, the final big piece. My most successful, been an agent for 30 years, over 30 years, the most successful clients that I've had in property don't sell their properties. They acquire them. And people go, that must be nice to be able to do that. Dude, you're paying a shit ton more by buying and selling them and buying and selling them and buying and selling them. So people think it's like a rich man's sport to actually hold the second property or the third property. I'd suggest it's a rich man's sport to keep selling and buying and selling and buying and selling and buying, because you are ripping up cash.
Oh, that's a great line, Mark. I 100% agree there. And then I guess it also probably comes to, you know, when you say a rich man's sport, I would disagree with that and say it's an educated man, because there are investments out there that you can get very close to in terms of a passive income or managing the cost on the mortgage on that second property. So it's definitely possible out there. It's just maybe look at your traditional, you know, unit. You might look at something commercial, say, where you might be getting a higher rent that helps out with those holding costs. I definitely understand probably people feeling debt servicing at the moment and how expensive everything is can be difficult, but it can be done. And I think from the examples you've just explained this morning, Mark, it's the best decision you could make.
I think that one of the richest men in Australia in property, and one of the richest men in Australia, Harry Trigger, I remember clearly a quote that he said. He said, "I've got the best." He goes, "I'm very fortunate." They go, "Why?" He said, "I've got the best partners you can ever have." And people go, "What do you mean partners? You got no partners?" He goes, "No, I do." He goes, "The Australian government and the Australian banks." He goes, "They're my two partners in my business." He goes, "They're great partners to have. We have the same interests." So I think property guys, watch your transactional guys, because when it's 2% selling fee, it's over the whole value, not the equity that you have in the property. When it's a 4% stamp duty on the next purchase or what you've paid, it's over the whole value and not the equity that you hold in the property. So you can crank that, potentially you can crank it if you've only got 20% in your property and you're going to be buying a new property and disposing of your own property. You're going to chew up 50% of your transactionals. And I'm not even talking about capital gains tax yet. I'm just talking about stamp duty and selling fees. It's a rip.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, no, important topic. And yeah, especially for someone out there that's wanting to grow that portfolio. And I mean, that's why we probably talk about this so much, because that's something that I'm very interested in. But it's I think this topic is flying under the radar, especially a lot of younger investors might not be exposed to this area yet. So it was a really interesting topic for me to discuss with Mark. So I thought it'd be great to talk about it amongst the viewers this morning, because like you said, each time you do that over the lifespan of you buying property, buying and selling,
that's right.
That's huge.
That's right. The example we gave this morning was on the next transaction. Imagine if you do the next transaction, the next transaction. Imagine if you do 3 of these, sell and buy, sell and buy, and sell and buy over 10 years. That is a fortune in selling and selling fees and buying fees, stamp duty and agent fees. It's a fortune. Never mind land tax on top of it all. It's a rip. Yeah, be careful.
Yeah. Yeah, there are always some cons, but it seems to be that having that purchasing power, being able to leverage the bank's money, not your own, these sort of advantages outweigh the negatives. And being a smart operator and knowing what's a good buy, what isn't, is only going to help you with that journey. So thank you for your insight into this, Mark. You've got obviously a lot of experience in this side of buying and selling, holding, and being able to create opportunity from holding your assets and allowing that compounding growth to continue. Something that
I like to watch. Over 30 years, you've just watched people be like, shit. But you know what, guys? It's a live show. If you have any topics you want us to cover, we do this daily. Let us know in the comments what topics you want to cover. We'll blast them out for you. And most importantly, if you need us, call us. We're here for you. Doesn't matter where you are, what state you're in. We're happy to help. Always feel free to call us at Novak. We're here to help you guys. Love ya.
See you guys.
Yeah, mate. Bye, mate.